if you don't take care of your car, you can buy a new one. If you don't take care of your body, it's the only one you have.
Prove to me that you are alive.
Okay, what up, everybody? Welcome to Prove to Me That You're Alive Lightcast, the only show in the world that challenges your perception on reality and life itself and gives you a mental kick in your spiritual gut so you can start gasping for air of information just like you did when you were a little kid. So I always say we have special guests, but today we have a truly special guest. To me, this guy has become a legendary figure, and I will explain to you why. So Doc, if you give me a second, we have these introductions that I must do for everyone. Basically a quick backstory. I've been having these headaches for the past year, and my wife, she's a lot smarter than me. So she's like, I found an osteopath. Why don't you go see him? So me being the I know it all guy, AKA, stubborn, I was taking my time until I started to have really bad headaches, like migraines, man. So then one day she finally drags me out of bed. She says, go see this guy. This guy is great. So this is what happened, man. I get to this doctor's office, and this was what was crazy, mind blowing. At first, original touch that he did, he put his hands on where I was having pain. Now, I'm like a mystic myself, right? I like everything mystical. I'm making it a mystical thing. But then my wife went, and guess what? She came back, she told me the same thing. She's like, listen, when I got there, he put his hands exactly on the spot that was hurting me. So we're going to get into if that's an accident or not an accident or anything like that. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I bring to you a legendary figure, half man, half amazing, a super cool dude, Dr. Johngarret. Thank you so much for being here, Doctor.
Thank you. Excited to be here with you.
Thank you so much for your time. And I know, you have you're always busy, you're always going to help people, you live to help people. So before we get to the very important topic of osteopath and what that is and how important the health of our spine is, because that was the whole idea behind the show. Who are you? Because we always like to get the behind the story, like, who are you? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And how did you get into the field that you are in?
Okay, sure. So I grew up here right in Princeton, New Jersey, and I was very passionate about playing ice hockey when I was a kid. And I ended up getting quite injured doing that. And I guess by the time I was about 18, I had a body that was in pain all of the time. And I found a osteopath from France. I tried, sort of the conventional paths. I tried chiropractic and I tried physical therapy, and I'd spoken to the surgeon, and I really felt like Humpty Dumpty. I'd like fallen down and I was terribly broken, and no one had like any good ideas on how to put me back together again, which was especially frustrating because of how young I was. And then I guess fast forward a few years, and I was introduced to this French osteopath named Guy Voyer, who was traveling to Manhattan, to North America, and treating clients and trying to teach students his techniques. And I didn't have any idea what an osteopath was. Even when I met him, he wasn't introduced to me so much as an osteopath, or I really wasn't paying attention to that word because I didn't know what it meant. But he treated me once in Manhattan. I was dizzy for 3 days after the treatment. And he gave me really just one exercise to do for my low back, which I did religiously for about 9 months. And I went from not being able to sit upright in an airplane seat, it being very painful to sit in the economy seat, to not having back pain anymore. So that was 20, I was 23 at the time, and I'm 41 now. So, quite a significant amount of time living pain free with my back. And I enjoyed the experience with Guy. And then I met some of his students, and I really liked the fraternity of people who were attracted to Guy. And I started going to his exercise school at first, and then his osteo school after that. And then I have a practice here in Princeton, both for rehabilitation as well as sort of sports performance. It's really all the same thing. We're really just looking at putting the body in sort of an equilibrium state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. First I have to give you a couple of flowers. And by the way, to everyone watching, we will make sure that we leave all the information in order to contact the doctor. If you want, I would urge everyone to go see him, and we're going to explain further on why. And I do have to give you a couple of flowers, because there is such a thing as obviously practice and the knowledge, but there's also something that um a true doctor, he has this feeling, he or her has usually these feeling, like they can feel a person. And I think you have that special something in you, that special talent where it goes beyond just the knowledge. So doc, listen, us in the West, we're so used to, something's hurting, go to chiropractor, he's gonna do a couple cracks, this and that. To all the people out there, because I was in the dark also, what is the practice of osteopath, and how different is it from the traditional, what we used to chiropractors?
Yeah, I guess the distinction from chiropractic, the way I explain it, is the chiropractor's looking at the alignment of your spine while you're on the table. So they're very interested in putting the joint of the spine in place on the table. And the distinction here with the osteopath, we really philosophically, we see you as a brain. And then the brain, it's a little bit like Pinocchio, the marionette. How does the brain pick up and recruit the joint when it goes to move around in the world? And what the osteopath is very interested in, what we're trying to do is, when your brain goes to recruit the joint to use it, does it recruit it intelligently and open the joint, or does the joint get stuck when the brain goes to use it? So that was the big difference. And that made the world of difference to me, because when I was injured, I would go to the chiropractor, they'd put me in alignment on the table, and then I'd go back to hockey practice, and like almost immediately the joint would go back out again. So when I found Guy and I started um, doing the brain exercises to keep the joint open and use the joint correctly again, that was like an aha moment for me. Um,
Mhm. So yeah, so this is one of the things that I've learned while going to visit you is, and what I've really been contemplating on is, because I myself, just like you, I was an athlete. I boxed from very young age to the age of 18. And what I'm realizing is that we take a lot of punishment throughout life, and like there is a time for punishment, then there's a time for recovery. But what I'm learning now is that we never fully recover, I guess, if the body takes an X amount of punishment, or we don't know how to properly heal. So am I being right about this? Are there injuries that we go through, especially athletes in life, that kind of they're still sitting in us, in one way or another, and especially in the spine?
Prove to me that you are alive.
Yeah, 100%. And not just athletes, like moving around in the physical world is a tax on the joint. And so if you're moving around in the world, then your joints, they typically, they start to, it's not wear out, but they start to um, function away from the ideal. And this happens across all of the joints. The athlete, it's amplified because you're using your body quite forcefully and at a high intensity. But for sure, you can slip off of a curb in the winter and put yourself completely out of order just as a regular person. So the program that I've been taught, it's really about the trying to put the the joints of the body back into the ideal organization, and you can live a really nice pain-free life within some acceptable tolerance of ideal. You don't have to have every joint in your body perfect, but beyond a certain point of degradation, the function changes, um, and you start dealing with dysfunction and pain. It's not really dissimilar from the way you have to maintain your automobile.
Mm.
Uh, the automobile doesn't have to be perfect to, get you around. But beyond a certain point of degradation, your car is no longer reliable and it starts causing problems. The big difference here is if you don't take care of your car, you can buy a new one. If you don't take care of your body, it's the only one you have. So um, it's frustrating to, like, going to the airport for me is really frustrating because you're really on display as like some tremendous dysfunction across a cross section of people. Um, so yeah.
So, how important is the spine to a human being's overall health?
Yeah, the spine is really the central column of the body, and a part of the brain, including some of the autonomic functions of the brain, are really housed in the spine. So if the spine gets weak and tight, then the brain isn't able to move as much as it would like to, and it starts impacting the body in a number of dimensions. And then if you think about the limbs are, they're really like hung off of the spine. So if the spine isn't functioning, then you can't possibly have the arms or the legs or the eyes function perfectly. Um, so the spine is definitely definitely very important to focus on the health of the spine.
Mhm. So, like, let's say for someone like me, like let's say a person is suffering from headaches. Now, it's not always obviously the same cause. It could be multiple different causes and everything. But like for someone like me, basically I'm suffering, I was suffering from headaches. Um what from what like, and maybe a lot of people, maybe some people can hear this and maybe they're going through the same thing, like what could be the cause of, like, let's say for someone like me that's suffering from headaches, and I go to see you, and first of all you knew where to like make it easier on me, but like let's say what happened in my case that I'm suffering from headaches and they're not direct head injuries and they're connected to like my spine.
Yes, so it helps. I think part of the disconnect is, as like regular people walking around, we don't have much of a relationship with what's beneath our skin. Even though we use our body every day, we're not really aware of how it functions. The brain is a tube and fluid has to move through the tube so that the brain can contract and relax. And headaches are always related to the brain's ability to run that contraction and relaxation cycle. So when we're looking at headaches, they fall into really two categories of possibilities as to why that cycle isn't working fully and isn't working fully in all of the parts of the brain. The first place to start is there sufficient electrolyte, sufficient hydration in the brain fluid? So that's why, as the osteo, we talk a lot about the quality of the water, the quality of the hydration. And that's always the starting point, because you want to change the water, and then you know that the water is good. So then, and that can solve, a lot of problems for people right there. And then the second part of it is the way the brain is organized. You have a general sense of it. You understand, you sort of have a fish brain at the core, and then you have a reptilian brain, and then you have a mammalian brain, and then you have a human executive function. In the osteopathic world, we learn about it with slightly different terminology. We call them ventricles. So you have the first and second ventricle are in parallel, and then you have the third and fourth ventricle, which are more towards the base of the brain, and then the fifth ventricle goes down the spine, and this is a loop, so the fluid moves through the ventricles. And then the different ventricles are held in place by a ligament system. And these ligaments keep the brain from crashing into the skull and crashing into each other. And so it's a very important ligament system. Inside of the brain, that ligament system is called dura mater. And that dura mater is in direct link to the ligaments that go all the way down your spine. So in your case, Naz, one of the things you're dealing with is because the ligaments in your spine were too tight, the ligaments inside of your head were too tight. And this causes a disturbance in the flow of fluid through the brain. So your brain isn't getting enough fresh electrolytes when it needs it. And so it gets stuck and isn't able to relax in the right way. And that constant contraction is a spasm, and the headache or the migraine ensues.
Mm-hmm.
It's a slight simplification of how it works, but
yeah,
it's a good explanation as well.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. So you mentioned electrolytes. Now, so not all the water has the proper amount of electrolytes that the brain needs. Is that what you're saying? Like, is there a particular water? Like, how does someone find, what good water, especially in our world?